Well, folks, we have some exciting updates on Switch 2 today because, look, it looks like, number one, Switch 2 is now leaked in the wild. I mean, like the full actual system. Someone has their hands on it. Oh, man, we got to talk about that. But that's not even the most interesting story today, even though that's pretty crazy considering, gosh, this thing might not be coming out for like 4 or 5 months still. And we haven't even made it to the April 2nd Direct. So, yeah, that is wild. But we actually have some updates on potentially Monster Hunter Wilds coming to Switch 2 because Capcom has finally addressed and talked about it. We also have some stuff coming from a former Nintendo employee, but it's someone who had been there a long time who decided to also talk about Nintendo Switch 2 and that we may have a surprise coming our way that we're not thinking about. They might even know, to be fair, because while they were working there, chances are Switch 2 was in development because they were working there as recently as 2021. And look, they've been there since the 80s. So this is a long-time Nintendo employee, a veteran. So that's pretty fascinating and a smidge more. So folks, I'm really excited for today's video. If you're excited and you're enjoying yourself and you're already feeling the energy I got going on, all you got to do is subscribe right here at Nintendo Prime so you can be updated on all things Nintendo Switch 2. And who knows, maybe we'll hit our goal this year of 150,000 subscribers. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into this first story because we got to go to a couple of places. So this is the first place I actually saw it. Was over here on the Gaming Leaks and Rumors Reddit. A user who leaked accurate Switch 2 CAD models now say they have a real Switch 2 in hand. Okay, it's posted by Necro Felipe yesterday. Yada yada. All right, cool. Why does that even matter? Because this person at the time that the story originally came out, I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it because in the end, the person just put out new CAD models that showed us exactly what Nintendo already showed us with the reveal. So the new CAD models, well, obviously more accurate than all the former CAD models. Yeah, look, Nintendo already showed us. There's nothing new in those CAD models, so they're kind of useless. But what's not useless is things they're saying about the Nintendo Switch 2, because obviously if they have it, like the retail version in hand, the number one thing people are going to want to know about is, hey, what's the UI like? What's the operating system like? Well, let's head on over to Family Boards, who have been following this situation closely because this user is in China. And look, it started with this post here by Kaisen, who said, hey, he says it can be powered on. Then he says the unit he received has no matched softwares and the UI can't be seen. And those are the posts for that. Now, why does this matter? Well, matters because it means the operating system is not loaded on this system. So while it is a final and completed unit, it is not one that hit the final stage right before it gets put in retail box, and that is where the operating system is loaded onto the system. So it's possible none of the units that are actually completed in manufacturing have the operating system loaded in yet. That is entirely possible that won't be happening until later this year, even though there could be millions of these already made and ready to go. That doesn't mean they loaded the final operating system. Now, how did this person get their hands on it? Well, they actually stated they bought it on the black market. Now, this isn't the first time we've heard about this. Genki, if you guys remember all those headlines back during CES 2025 last month, they claimed they had one and that they got it on the black market before Nintendo shut them down, and then they rescinded their comments and said, no, our stuff's just based on the same models everyone else has been looking at, those CAD models. They backtracked on everything, but that was after like a full almost 48 hours about bragging about they have the system and they got it on the black market and anyone with enough money could do it. Obviously, this is one of those stories that I'm not going to run around and verify. I'm not going to go on the black market and put my computer and my network at risk just to verify this story. The black market is a thing that does exist. It is real on the internet, and tech products leak there all the time. People have bought iPhones before they've been revealed off of the black market, oftentimes, again, without the operating system. So it's one of those things where this is actually quite common. The story sort of lines up. We're not going to learn anything new. I mean, the biggest thing that I maybe would want out of this situation is I'd like him to leak photos potentially of it. I mean, at this point, we already know what it looks like, but you know, hey, if like the attach and detach mechanism, like seeing it actually get used on a physical product would be kind of neat. Hey, is that new dock compatible with the Switch OLED? That should be something you should be able to check out, assuming that you got a dock with it. Maybe the person didn't get a dock with it. How long does it take to charge from 0 to 100? that might be something you'll be able to test. You'll have to manually time it because there's no operating system on it. Also means you have to manually drain the battery. Also, there's other things you could find out if you do have this physical unit. I know things that I would do since it's basically useless. You're not going to be able to use it as a game machine. So, or you could take it apart. You could tear it out, and you could tell us exact details. What kind of speakers are we looking at? What kind of motion controls are we looking at? And what people really want to know is you could figure out the exact details of the screen technology and actually figure out what sort of screen it's using and all the various specs for it. That's right. You don't need to be able to turn a screen on to figure that out if you could just take it apart. So these are all things that I would be more interested in if I had one of these units. You could actually discover quite a bit about Switch 2. So hopefully this person decides to do something about it. Right now, they seem to be advertising themselves out to Switch 2 accessory makers, being like, hey, if you guys want more information or you want to go hands-on, why don't you guys contact me? Kind of sounds like that he's selling himself to the highest bidder, which is kind of weird considering that if he got off the black market, the accessory makers could just go on the black market and buy one for themselves. You know what I mean? Again, this is one of those things that, hey, if I had this on hand, I'd be trying to do something useful for the community with it rather than just trying to sell out to the highest bidder. But hey, to each their own. It is a thing. It is a story out there. So take that for what you will. Now, we're going to get into a former Nintendo employee who actually thinks Nintendo is hiding something about the Nintendo Switch 2. Something special. We're going to go over here to this article. This is an interview that Games Radar did. I believe the Spanish website. Anyways, it says here that Zelda and Star Fox veteran says the Nintendo Switch has been a global success, but thinks the House of Mario still has something up its sleeve for Switch 2. Speaking to Games Radar Plus, Takaya Imura says the original Switch is a success no matter how you view it. Mind you, that's not to say Nintendo isn't likely to switch things up for the console successor. Now, we're going to get to his quotes, but I think it's important for context here, if you guys have never heard that name, to know who he is. So we head over here to this Nintendo wiki, and you can see that, you know, he's been working at Nintendo since 1989 all the way through 2021. He is really well known for being the art director and character designer for most of the cast of Star Fox and F-Zero. But he also helped co-design characters with Shigeru Miyamoto, including characters not just Captain Falcon, but how about Tingle? Tingle, my man, one of my favorite characters. So he's worked there for a long time. He's got his credits in a whole bunch of games. You can see this here. He's even credited in Omega 6, which is actually his own company made that game. But you can see, you know, Starlink Battle for Atlas. He helped with some of the character designs in that back in 2018. He's got special thanks as well, all the way up through Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And so, yeah, he's done interviews even in IGN in 2021. But again, he is someone who worked at Nintendo a long time and would probably have some insight into what Nintendo's doing. Maybe even potentially has seen a Switch 2 at one point, although he'd be under NDA, so he's not going to tell us a whole lot there. But he did say something. So it says, the Switch has had a really long lifespan and sold really well, which must mean that this is something that is a global success, he says. It's got supporters all around the world, and I was thinking it would be difficult to really change that. But having said that, I think they've still got something up their sleeves. So what he's saying here is like, hey, look, we're not necessarily going to see anything fancy here. Like, he wouldn't expect Nintendo to change something like major when they're so successful at the moment. But despite that, he thinks something's up the sleeve. Now, that could just be a reference to the mouse stuff, or maybe there's that C button and whatever feature that ends up being. He seems to think that, hey, even though Nintendo's going to play it safer, they always have something. So what that something is besides the obvious mouse stuff, I don't know, but we can go into a few more of his words here. So he says, so compared to the EU and US, the budget for a so-called AAA game over here in comparison is a lot smaller. The same for films as well. But I don't think that necessarily having a big, huge budget means that you can make a great game. I really do think that games, the best games, are down to the best ideas. And I think Japanese game creators are able to work within those restraints as they were, but they can come to play, so to speak, with ideas that can trump the bigger budgets. And that's obviously speaking to a larger thing where game budgets have been inflating the world over in the AAA space, but companies like Nintendo and Capcom and others are able to keep their budgets relatively reasonable and still deliver AAA quality experiences. So I do think that that's just an interesting take. You guys may or may not agree with that, but hey, you know what? That is what a former Nintendo employee had to say. Now, speaking of Capcom, we all know about a game we want to come to Switch 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, right? Monster Hunter has a huge audience with Nintendo ever since the Tri Days and all that stuff on the DS, the 3DS. Like, it just makes sense that, hey, Monster Hunter would do well. Monster Hunter Rise sold 8-9 million units on Switch, but it was first developed for Switch, and maybe that'll happen this time around where there'll be one custom developed for Switch too. But Wilds is that thing like, hey, we didn't get Monster Hunter World, maybe we can get Monster Hunter Wilds. So here's what Capcom had to say about it. This is over on the Spanish website for Game Reactor. And it says, hey, Capcom on Monster Hunter Wilds for Nintendo Switch 2. We need to learn how to get the most out of it. So Ryozo Tushimoto, I totally butchered his name, recalls that the announcement is recent and admits that we will need time to get to know the hardware better. So as we go down here, we're going to see some quotes. And here is what he had to say. Of course, regarding Monster Hunter Wilds, platforms, we don't have anything extra to announce beyond what's already there. So he's saying, hey, we're not announcing any new platforms today. The Japanese developer tells Game Reactor correspondent Javier in the video, but we're also kind of in the same position as everyone else with Switch 2. It's such a new announcement, and we need to take our time in the near future to get to know exactly the nature of the hardware and how we'll best use it. And that's something that's going to be in the future for us. So this kind of sounds like, hey, Monster Hunter Wilds won't be there day and date on the system, which is probably to be expected. Most people don't think it'll be day and date, but is it going to be there at all? And he's not ruling it out. He's not saying Monster Hunter Wilds won't be on Switch 2. He's just being like, we need more time to figure things out. Look, Capcom's probably had dev kits for a year minimum, maybe 2. They're always one of the biggest Nintendo partners and probably have had dev kits for quite some time. But I don't know what the guy you expect him to say. Is he supposed to just be like, yeah, so we've been messing with the Switch 2 for 2 years, and obviously Monster Hunter Wilds is coming to it. Meanwhile, he's under NDA, and he's not even supposed to say anything. What's telling here is he didn't say it won't come to the platform. I think that's my biggest takeaway. That doesn't mean that it will, and I'm not trying to tell you that it will, but the fact that he's not saying that it won't come, and they just need more time with it because it's such a new announcement. Look, Capcom's had dev kits long before this thing was announced. Let's not kid ourselves. But what do you expect them to say? This is pretty much what everyone's been saying when asked about Switch 2. They're like, oh, it looks really interesting. The new announcement. Take-Two. Hey, Nintendo's audience is everyone now. It's not just kids. We're not ruling anything out. And it's kind of like, yeah, okay, well, Take-Two's probably had a dev kit like for a while. So why can't you say more? Well, because NDAs. I mean, look, April 2nd can't come soon enough for some of these companies. You could tell that they could have gave a nonchalant answer. They could have just been like, hey, we're not going to be talking about platforms that haven't been released yet. They could have just gave something like that, but instead, everyone's kind of talking and beating around the bush about Switch 2, probably because they're waiting for April 2nd. April 2nd is probably when the NDAs come up after the Nintendo Direct, and then these companies can finally talk about their games. That's what I'm assuming anyways, because at that point, the games will be revealed, and we're on our way to launch. So, I don't know. Take that for what you will. Obviously, we have no idea exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but sometimes I feel like we can read a little bit, just a little bit between the lines. All right, guys. I am Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime. I hope you had a damn good time with this video. Hope to catch you tonight on our live stream, if not tomorrow on our podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. Do apologize again for not getting a video out yesterday. Kind of a weird day for me, but hey, weird days happen. Wasn't a day off. I still worked. Just couldn't quite get a video out. But you know what? We took yesterday's video, we smashed it into today's, and you got all the news in one video. So there you go, folks. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next video.